Hi, and welcome to the Team CPN Quick Connect podcast, where you can stay informed, keep connected, and learn from one another along the way. I'm your team captain, Richard Greer. On today's podcast, we're going to split it into two parts as we catch up with Team CPNZ athletes Sarah Shanks and Tim Raw about their recent top 10 performances at the Triathlon World Champs. Tim has been to a number of World Championships over the years and has placed in the top 10 once before in the Aquabike, which is a swim and a 120k bike. His A goal this year, a blinder, was to see if he could achieve that performance again. Sarah, on the other hand, was attending her first World Championships after qualifying for the Cross Tri, the swim, mountain bike, and trail run in Rotorua earlier on this year. And my notes have just frozen, but we're coming back to that. Today's podcast is all about how these athletes travel to the other side of the world out of a New Zealand winter straight into the middle of a European summer to perform to their best, represent themselves, their families, Team CPNZ and New Zealand at the World Tri Champs. But before we get to part one of this podcast with Tim, I need to check in to see how your Tour de France challenge is getting on. The outcome of this challenge, the most important thing, is to have a consistent month and hopefully come out the other end feeling fit and excited for spring. If you're not sure about how the best way to sort of do that and which goal to set yourself, the best way I've found is to open up Strava on your desktop, and then there's a little graph there that will show you the months of the year, and then you can see the vertical meters and the distance you've traveled over the last 12 months and get a bit of a feel for what you've kind of done as an average, and then select the number from our Tour de France spreadsheet that's kind of doable for you. When working with others, I've found that it's better to select a number that's a wee bit on the easier end of the scale, and then if that's going well with the final week to 10 days left, you can push on rather than going too big too soon and then overcooking yourself. For me, I'm lining up that 15% of the Tour de France, which is 500 Ks and 7,875 vertical meters for July. And hopefully this will be just a little bit more than Coach Tim Hansen. But don't worry, he won't be listening, so that should be completely fine. The challenge about this July Tour de France effort is about elevation and the distance and of the Tour de France. So you just need to keep an eye on to make sure you're balancing both out. Vicky's definitely holding strong at the top of the podium, but the race is definitely heating up with Shiraz and Craig right there behind her. So make sure that you check to see if your vertical meters are actually adding on to the challenge, because it's definitely distance orientated around how everyone's going so far. A couple of other notes is Sunday, the 31st of August, for a spring brunch ride and run. Now, we've been running this every year since like 2008. Last couple of years, we've missed out. I've been racing in China for the last 2 years. So it'd be nice to get that back, have a bit of a face-to-face catch-up, all different levels. Let's come for a bike or a run and just catch up, get together and celebrate the fact that spring is pretty much here. And the other one actually is our new store is up and running, which basically is all about special deals for those coached athletes that we're working with. So, but the trick with that is to do that, it's password protected. So if you need that code, the code for the website page, ask your coach and they'll let you know, and then you'll be able to have a bit of a look around and see if there's any things that tickle your fancy. So without further ado, let's welcome Tim Raw onto episode of the Team CPNZ Connect podcast number 41 and Team CPNZ Live number 188 to talk about the Worlds in Pontevedra, Spain that's just happened. Tim Raw, welcome to the podcast. How are you getting on today?
Yeah, good, thank you. And bathing in the English summer heat.
Yes, and I love your very English-looking background with your grandfather clock behind you. You've done very well with that. Is that a green screen?
That's I don't know, 1816. That's all. So it's a late model.
Okay. So it's not a green screen. It's all real life.
No, real life. No, these are they all
Whoops, you better straighten that up. Yeah, good stuff. So you're in the UK now, I guess, and we're here to talk today about your performance in the Aquabike World Champs in Spain very recently. How are you feeling now, reflecting on that performance?
Well, it was there were a lot of expletives actually. It was awesome experience. It was epic, and there's been a few people I've talked to since the event, and it was one of those events where I think everything was thrown at us, and it sort of, I guess it was the ultimate test. And one of the things that for me it was, I guess, my ultimate race test of years and years of racing and doing adventurous things, and it sort of did come down to this. It felt this week it was a seminal moment that I went out to do something and I did better than I ever thought I would do in so many different ways. So, you know, I'm quite quiet about it, quite calm, and just enjoying and lapping it up. But it's been a long, it was a long ambition, this one. And so I guess there's a bit of strength in there. There's a bit of like, wow, that was pretty impressive. That was sort of message to myself.
And these are the best moments, aren't they? Just after the event, where you get the chance to sit back and bask in your glory, and because a lot of the build-up is about, I got to do this and this, and sort of you're trying to get all your ducks in a row and train and manage everything else. But it's nice just to sit back and actually reflect on a job well done, because a lot of us don't do that often either, do we?
Well, there's a couple of things. I've done some racing in my time, and you know, often you know, we have good intentions. And I think on this race, I got to carry out all those intentions, and they all came together in line. And I know there's people who talk about doing the perfect round at golf, or people talking about the perfect football match where you make the right passes, and like, you know, once in a lifetime career, if possible. It felt like that was, you know, could I do it again? Yes, absolutely, I could do it again. But did it also feel like that was a sort of once in a lifetime experience? It was also that as well.
Yeah, so good. That's so those who are listening out there, like Team CP stands for complete performance. The complete performance piece come out of that exact thinking, is that can you absolutely nail an event, all the different things that can possibly go wrong, your gear, your pacing, your nutrition, etc., etc., etc. But to say that you've nailed it is really the goal. And then whatever the placing is, whatever the time is, the time is. But for you to say that you've nailed it, that's the key piece.
Well, you know, it's interesting. If there was one thing that really rings in my ears, is that it was all about the process. It was all about getting, and it always has been for me. It's all about how you get to the start line. It's not about how you get to the finish line. It's how you get to the start line, and what's going through. Literally, I get goosebumps standing on the start line of World Championships. It's like, if you haven't done it, there's something different there. There's a weight to it. It's not doing an Ironman. It's not doing another type of a big race. There is an absolute weight to probably a bigger weight than people sort of realize, and the weight of expectation from people around the world talking to you on your phone and like zoning in and all of those things. So getting to the start line is a really, really important part. That's the first thing. And I guess the second thing is what you're thinking when you get to the start line as well, what sort of condition your head is in. And again, there are so many things that can trigger that it's, which we can talk about in the
that's right. So let's just take a step back for a moment. Give us a bit about your background, Tim. So this isn't your first rodeo, as you've mentioned. You've been to the World Championships before. Tell us a little bit about what you've done to get here. And
I think I'm an adventurer. I always have been. I'm an adventurer. I'll, like, if I see something that's got a bit of a risk to it, or, you know, where what I term find my edge. You know, where am I going to find my edge and my limit? That's what I do all the time. And everything that I do, I sort of think about, that'll be interesting. I don't know what will happen if I try that. And as I started with a background in sport. I did a degree in sport. I play sport, of, you know, the traditional sort of school sports. I had a running background. My dad's a big runner, cross-country running in the UK. I then went into sort of explore the outdoors and got into climbing and kayaking and skiing, and then started in sort of late 80s, 90s, doing some really big, what was now multi-sport events. You know, we would cycle between Carnarvon and Ben Nevis and run up the three biggest mountains, which aren't that big in the UK. It was a 900 kilometer 70 kilometer run non-stop, and we used to do a lot of those types of adventure racing in sort of the late 80s, early 90s. And then I was married, had children, and I had to sort of dial down the adventure a bit. And so I got into, when I was in Australia, I got into swimming and triathlon. And so I spent really racing triathlon from sort of my late 20s now till now I'm 60, and that's taken me from doing Australian national state races to America, doing the nationals in America when we lived over there, and then doing Ironman, and then getting into representing New Zealand.
Yeah, great. So Aquabike Worlds in this format. How many times have you done this before?
This is my third
time.
My third time, yeah. I unfortunately can't run as much as I used to. Lack of cartilage on my knee, so I still love competing. I'm very competitive, so that Aquabike gives me that buzz, and again the distances. You've got to put a bit of effort into it. I know the short distances are also very difficult, but I think as you get a bit older, the challenges of the longer distance seem to attract more. Maybe I should say that.
Yeah, that's right. And it's extremely competitive as well in terms of the level of people based in Europe. Obviously, you got all of Europe, and there were a couple of guys from the States in the top 10 as well that you were playing with. So, we'll talk about that more in a moment. But tell us a bit more about your build-up. How did your training go? What were some key training sessions that you did to get yourself in that sort of best shape of your life type stuff? Yeah,
a couple of things. One is we had a plan. Was the first thing, and the plan started a year ago. So I think it's really important people know that we started a year ago. So I had plenty of time to build. That's the first thing. Second thing is we used watts, and I think that wattage and that power, those power readings helped us manage the volume of training, and was able to increase it to the right levels. I think when
you've used heart rate in the past and been very good at that, but using power has just brought that extra edge, hasn't it, to dial exactly this is what we want.
And I think the other thing it does, along with training peaks, is it manages your training load, and that's really hard to do on your own. And I think that's what I've learned. Managing your training load is really hard to do on your own. I do swim squads, so I've got a really good set of people and coaches that I know, and they know me. So I think they've got that understanding of what I'm capable of. I'm very comfortable swimming, so it sort of could sit there, and I know I would turn out a good time for my swim, a good position for my swim. So I think that always the issue with my racing has been I've come out of the water very well, and I've always lost 4 or 5 places on the cycling. It's always not quite been able to hold it. And I think there were 2 things. So in answer to your question, one was that I looked at the race course, and the training fitted for those in Christchurch, the long bays, sort of short bays over the hills, quite strength based work where you're doing 1,000 meters plus 1,500 meters of climbing over the sort of 100 kilometers of cycling. So I think that was a good core element. I think the second session that was really important was a top end session that I did through the winter with Richard on Zwift. And also I did another session, which was a unders and overs session. And I'm still not really convinced I've got that session. I think it still goes, that session wins, I lose. It's a real tough session. But what it did, that session was really important, because one of my weaknesses, so people, I know what my weaknesses are. So one of my weaknesses was I come out of the swim, and I've got a good swim on me, and I usually hammer it through transition. And then I have a real sort of bit of a down on that first sort of 20%, 10% of the ride. I just can't click into it. And Rich and myself, we've been working at that, and I think that real high end session really helped in this race, because I did a very quick transition. I think it's the second quickest transition, and I was taking it easy in that transition, so I could have gone quicker if I'd wanted to. And then I got on my bike, and I was on it straight away, and I could maintain a really good level of power. That's sort of the balance between how I trained and what happened on the race.
Nice. So how are we feeling on the start line, and what were the conditions like in Spain?
So Scorchio. It was I think they have sort of green, yellow, red, black sort of temperature zones, and it was in black. This is like Europe's on fire type of thing. and we knew it was going to be really, really hot, and so it was really unknown. And you were going, I'm going to go up this hill. I don't know what I'm going to be like at the top of this hill at this heat, and I've got to do it 3 times. It's about a 20 minute or so climb there, and the interesting thing is that I know I'll probably be okay on the first one. Second one, not sure. On third one, definitely not sure. So it was all about pacing on that sort of climb section of the cycle. On the swim start, it was a river. So we went downstream for 500 meters, upstream for 1,500 meters, and downstream for 1 kilometer. And the water temperature was about 23 degrees, and it was the hottest it's ever been in Pontevedra. So this was sort of record-breaking heat. And there was a balance. Everyone was so nervous about wetsuit or non-wetsuit swim, and that that really triggered people. So how much time do you spend swimming not in a wetsuit? Well, I spent quite a lot of time doing that. So that was sort of one of the things that, although I never imagined I'd have to be in that situation, mentally that didn't push me. So I did have a wetsuit, and that made it, I think, a lot easier for me in terms of I didn't have to burn as much energy. The start line itself, I was pouring bottles of water down my wetsuit to keep cool because it was that hot. It was crazy hot, and you go into stacks. So you come in your waves, and you stand in like a chicken coop, not quite. Like you're in a start area, and you move down. So you're in there for 10, 15 minutes in 33 degrees heat, or maybe even longer. And so that trying to keep cool was one thing. And the other thing I do in my preparation is try and keep as calm and as quiet as possible. So I try and don't get overly stimulated by anything. I don't do a lot of talking. I don't do a lot of moving. I've done my warm up, and I'm just really, really trying to slow everything down and be really calm about everything, and just be really focused on a very strong balance stroke.
Yes. So, are there any key things you're saying to yourself to help that, or is it just a bit of breathing, or just trying to just be calm? What are you
it's just really not trying to get overly stimulated and distracted by things. So that's why I tend to look. Pardon?
I was just going to say, your plan, so it's just about focusing on that and executing you. That's what it's about.
Yeah. And so not trying to sort of go, not trying to think about what I should do. It's actually clearing my mind from everything. And it's not sort of overly filling my mind and going and sort of going, I've done the training here. My numbers are great. I'm used to all the changes that have happened, this temperature. Yeah, I'll handle that, but I've got a plan for it. Yeah. And so what do? I think about the next thing that's in front of me. So in a very sort of, I think when I was younger, I used to like the music blaring and get fired up and all of that. And it's like, I am completely opposite to that. I'm quite sort of quite still. I don't even move a lot before I get in that, in the 10 minutes between finishing a warm up and starting. It's great. I love it. I love it. It's a good moment. It's a really good moment.
And experience brings that as well, doesn't it? The more times we stand on the start line, the calmer you can be, the more focused on you can be. You can do it. Your skills are up to standard. As you say, you've done the training as best as you can do. So let's just walk forward to that challenge and go and give it a good crack and see what happens.
Yeah. Absolutely. Easy to say, but it's easy to say, but I think you've got to practice it. I think it has to be practiced. You have to do it. You have to practice it. Everything that I'm talking about here, I've practiced a lot. I've done a lot. And so nothing's going to trigger me because I'm used to all the things that might happen to me. So I sort of just go, I'm not going to get distracted away from doing a good race. And the race will work. What I've done before the start line, the training I've done before the start line will measure what the result is. That's how I think.
Yes. So the start didn't go really that smoothly because you were all in the water. You had 10 meters to the start line and then you're off. So tell us about that and how did you manage that?
That's interesting. The horns, as I was swimming across, I was moving across to the far end buoy, and maybe I only had 10 meters or so to swim. And I went, that's interesting. And went, well, it is what it is. So let's get on with it. And so I just continued with the plan and going, I'm not going to react to that. I'm going to respond to it. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to get into that long stroke. The first 500 meters is downstream, so I can just get into my positioning and my sighting and my stroke. I've been in the water before. I know that 500-meter section because I've done it the day before. And then I'm going to build strongly up the 1,500 meters. But what I'm not going to do is get tired by the top of the 1,500 meters. So I'm going to build. My first half of that swim is a build. The second half is then going, okay, I can now stretch it out and lean into it a bit, knowing that I just didn't want to overheat. That was
good stuff. So you got out of the swim. You had a very quick transition, the second fastest on the day. How were the legs once you were getting on the bike, and what was your pacing plan? How did you manage that for you?
Yeah, so I set my gear as quite a light gear on my bike. I had my pedals. I had my shoes in my pedals, so I didn't put them on in the changing areas. You run through a changing area and then you go into the transition. And I had my helmet, I had my gel, which was really important, and then I had some backup sodium, and that was what I decided to take with me because I wanted more than I possibly could need, depending on the climate, on the weather. And then I ran out of transition. I knew my heart rate was at the right level that it should be, that I wanted it to be at, to be able to get on the bike and not sort of be in the sort of zone. Well, I guess zone 5. I don't want to be in zone 4 to zone 5. You know, I was at the level I needed it to be at, and I had a relatively light gear, and then I just went into getting into a good rhythm, into my shoes. And then looking at my power wattage, which was really where I was going to sit for the first lap, which was about 10% for those people who want to know, 10% under my FTP, something like that.
Yeah. So that was just managing it, because we can easily blow the doors off there.
Yeah.
But it's about, when we looked at it, it was like, well, actually, if you can average that kind of power for the 3 laps rather than going amazing and then going horrible, that was all it was all about. It was all about that third climb, wasn't it, this time?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I then found out or heard as I was on the course, that, you know, I came out 4th, and that number 5 and number 6 were 90 seconds behind me, and that continued for 120 kilometers.
Yeah, right.
I think when
so
I looked at go ahead.
Yeah, so you finished. I've did some stats on that. They were all you 3 of you, 4th, 5th, and 6th, within 2 minutes of each other. 0.06% of the time over your 5 hours worth of racing. So, I mean, it's not often in a race like this, 120k time trial, that you're effectively racing 2 other people. So it's on.
Well, it was really interesting because sort of 2 things going on in my mind. You know, one is I'm always checking in with my body and going, well, how comfortable am I? And I was always like, I'm pretty comfortable at the moment. I'm pretty good. And so the first lap was like, I get this is good. I'm getting into the beat. And then I come down off the lap and then get a call. And I'm like, okay, so we're about the same. I'm going to keep going and I just sort of had to consciously go, I'm going to keep going with my numbers and my approach, because I know how quickly you can fall off a cliff in heat. And then I got to the end of the second lap. There were 3 40-kilometer laps, and as I got to the end of the second lap, I recognized or realized that the aid stations were running out of water. And what I'd done was I'd taken my needs bag and put in 2 bottles of with precision hydration in them, in both of them. And I thought, I'm going to use those if I think I need them going forward. If I don't, I can leave it. But and so it was like a stroke of luck. Don't know whether it was just well thought out. So I took the risk to stop, because when you go into the special needs, you have to pull your bike up, you have to stack your bike, you have to run across, not far, you have to pick your stuff up. And with a minute or so's difference, it was going to shorten that.
Yeah, it's like an F1 pit stop. Do we change our tyres? Correct. We carry on.
And I went for it, knowing that I was guaranteed to do the best I possibly could on that hill. And what actually played out with it, I thought it was really interesting, was that as I went up the hill, I felt stronger and stronger. And as I was going up the hill, my relative pace to the other riders, not the ones behind me, but the other riders on the course, I was catching them. So I was going, relatively, I feel like I'm being a bit stronger on this third lap, and was quite interested to see how people had fallen off and how slow they were going. And I got to the top of that, I got to the top of the course, the hill, and thought, right, so I'm 90 kg, I am going to go down this hill. Like, I'm probably not going to be caught down this hill. And I got onto the flats, and in my mind, my legs were good. And I think those drinks did it. And we can talk about my hydration and things like that. But as I got to the flat, I learned that if I can maintain a high pace, that 90 seconds or 1 minute with 10 kilometers to go, it's quite hard to break down. They would have to be going exceptionally fast to catch me at that rate. And I think those sort of things that were in my mind was just, I looked at like 90 RPM, I looked at like optimum heart rate, and then I looked at the number, and I tried to get that speed balance right. And I just, as I got to the bottom end, there's a U-turn, and I saw that the guy was behind me, and I was like, oh, I probably got it. I don't know how long, but it could be 40 seconds. And I was like, right, this is it. I'm just going to cut loose, and I'm just going to give it absolutely everything. And I think I was hitting 45 kilometers an hour as I was going back in for the last 5K. And I'd already mentally got, I'm going to have to, if I have to sprint, I'm going to give this a sprint. So I knew the finish and all of those things. And I just had one look over my shoulder in the whole 120 kilometers. And that was always like 500 meters from the line. And I just sort of looked over, and there was no one there. And I was like, yeah, I think I've done it.
Let's enjoy this. And did those guys ever pass you, or were they always behind you for the whole time?
I think when you look at the numbers, I was very close to number 4, but I think he had the person who was third overall, he passed me, and he had a slower swim. The person who was behind me, number 5, I think we were very close on the transition, but I think I was just in front of him all the time. I think I was just in front of him.
And then number 6 was slower again on the swim, but then had a good bike ride and was coming.
Yeah, it was coming, but I didn't even in the out and back, which it was an out and back course. Even in that, I just tried not to sort of get too focused on just thinking about them or try to look at them too much. I was just like trying to be forward
until you got to that last little piece on the last top of the final climb, and then last downhill, like, right, we're racing now, kind of thing.
Yeah. And what was really interesting when I finished, you go through the finishing line, and then you actually can get off your bike and go to transition. And it was an English guy, Paul, and he came up to me, and I went, "Oh yeah, man, there was a race on there." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "How are you going? Do you think you were going to get me?" And he said, "Nah, I spoke to it at the top of that third hill. I was done." And I was like, "I wish you could have told me that." What have I to go through all of this?
I could have just
that was interesting. We make assumptions that people behind you are stronger and are going to catch you, or not. I don't know, but that's what I tried to move away from. And so all my mental work is about clearing my mind from any messages or noise, and just going, let's do what I can do, what's in front of me.
Am I doing as best as I can do in that situation? What's my nutrition? Like you talked about the body check, and how am I going? All those heart rate numbers, etc. So just focusing on you. How did it feel crossing that finish line, knowing that you put a performance down like that?
Well, you sort of. Well, what happens is with an Aquabike, because you're on the same course as the triathlon, you rack your bike, and then you can run up the finishing chute if you want to. Well, I was walking up with Paul because we don't need to run, so we don't, sort of thing. So we were walking along, and you still not. I was still sort of like, have I done this? I need to see it as a result. I need to see the result. Everyone sort of thinks they know, but it's all sort of unofficial. So I was going up there going, wow, yeah, I think I've done this. I think I've done it, but I didn't quite give myself sort of permission to jump around until I'd actually officially seen it. And you can see it on the finishing arch as you go through the official finish.
Right, but your time's already stopped. Your time has already stopped.
Your time had already stopped, but you
Has it already stopped? Have we stopped, guys? Are you sure?
Yeah, no.
Paul, are you just slightly in front of him as you cross the line, just to make sure? You dip your head?
No. They were. It would have been that, but they did have a camera on the bike finish. Is about. It's probably about 300 or 400 meters away from the run. Well, where everyone finishes on the triathlon. Yeah.
So this next question, cooked toast. How cooked were you when you got to the finish line? 1 being I'm burnt, I'm completely toasted. 9 being I'm just slightly toasted. Where would you say that you were at the end of that bike ride?
And this was in absolute. I was 8.
So that's only lightly burnt. That's only lightly.
Yeah.
You've only. It's just so you weren't really. Could have you gone deeper? Could have you gone harder then, Tim? I expected you should have been like a 1-ish. 1 to 2, based on what you were telling me. Why I said 8 was, sometimes you can get across a line and you can barely stand up. Yes.
And you dive for cover and you want, and I wasn't. I was like, I felt like I just had a great energy about myself. And sure, people said, wow, you were going a bit at the end there across the line, and I was sweating and all of those things were happening. But the sort of bounce back was real quick, and my legs haven't hurt that much, and I haven't been that tired. And I don't know whether it's just the general adrenaline or euphoria of sort of such an epic race, but no, I personally put it down to a year of good training. And
I feel like if I was to ask this question 5Ks before the finish line, I think that number might have been different. If you were say 200 meters from the finish line, the number's probably slightly different, or 500 meters before you looked over your shoulder. But then a minute after, it was like you're bouncing back pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Right. I mean, some races really. Yeah, there you go. Well,
the next photo I need to show, and for those that are listening to this won't see this, but talk us through this photo, Tim.
So I was. So there was the Kiwi team, the New Zealand team, Kiwi team. It's great camaraderie, great support, fantastic bunch of athletes to hang around, and I know some of them and over the years, and they always have to find a spot to celebrate, sort of thing, and so all the runners were going were on the run course, and we went to a place, a bar which we call Kiwi Corner, and so every time a Kiwi athlete came, everyone was shouting and screaming, and it was fantastic. And as I came, I walked in there after finishing, and one of the athletes' partners, said, "How did you do?" And I talked about that, and fantastic, congratulations. And so they said, "Right, you're going to sit down." They sat me down, and then they just thrust this beer in my hand and said, "Congratulations," and then took a shot. And that's the shot of me, not very long after the finish. And as I say, that's why I was number 8 for toast, because I didn't feel like I had.
Yeah, that's awesome, isn't it? So, as a summary, are there any key things that you take away from this experience that we haven't talked about yet? Obviously, an experience you'll never forget.
Yeah, I think what I'm taking away from it is now what I know is possible. So it took me to a place beyond, and in my training, it took me to a place beyond. I think the type of training I did with you, the very hard sessions we did, and then the sessions that fitted the course. And then I think that the next part was being really thoughtful about my nutrition and my liquid. And I think that really enabled me to be at my best. I think that's the way I describe it. The liquid and the food enabled my body to do what it needed to do. And then just the mental part of just sort of going out and enjoying it. It sounds crazy, but I didn't have that weight of expectation on. I was a bit in the zone on the whole race. I was in the zone. I was like, I got this. I think I got this. Yeah.
Yes. And we haven't just on that nutrition, haven't really covered that off too much, but you talked about getting those extra bottles for fluid to be able to keep you performing well at the end, which is critical. How many sort of grams of carbohydrates were you running at? What was your target there?
So I ran at about 30 minutes before the swim, I had 50 grams of carb. I had another 50 gram in transition, and then on the bike, I had 100 grams an hour. So I had about 500 to 550 grams of carb, and then I had around about 750 mil of precision electrolyte before the swim, and then I probably on the bike I had around 5 liters of liquid.
And that's the trick just there, is that the amount of fluid you're drinking. It's not just the carbohydrate piece, it's the fluid that you're getting on, especially in that hot environment. That's absolutely critical, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I had some beer, and then I don't think I went to the restroom for another three hours after that. So that my body needed that liquid. That's what it said to me. My body needed that liquid. So, if you go in harder for 5 hours, then you need 5 liters, 6 liters of liquid in. That's what your body burns. Right. And I'm not sure I would have set out thinking like that. But the week before, I think when you and me talked, that plan sort of evolved very quickly. So I did respond very quickly to the situation.
Yeah, good on you. Where to from here, Tim? What happens next? You're in Blighty in England at the moment.
Yeah, no, I come back to New Zealand in a couple of weeks. Got some work here. Clearly the winter, and there's a bit of backcountry skiing to be done. I gather the snow's pretty good, but I will probably go to Wollongong and do the standard distance aquabike, based on this performance here. And it's a flat course, which actually, that's the other thing that it was so good about this race, was that I'm not really built to be a climber, and I still managed to get a 4th place in a long distance aquabike. So the standard distance will be an equally good challenge for me, slightly different, but another good challenge. So I think that's what it set me up to do.
Yeah, good stuff. Well done. We'll continue to bask in your glory, Tim. It's not often a performance like this, but congratulations on a fantastic day out, and all the best for your travels getting home. And let's, as I say, reflect on what you've just done, but get excited about the next adventure. Yeah, we'll do. And Richard, you're a legend. Thank you so much. And I said it earlier privately, but I am convinced I could not have done that on my own. Convinced. Yeah. So thank you. No, that's great, Tim, and it's fun to work with you. And one other thing that we didn't mention is that we've worked together just recently, but we started working together, what was it, good 10 years ago? And
it must be.
At least that, back in the old days.
Yeah,
and then had a break, and then just come back on the last year or two. So pretty fun to catch up, connect, and still pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. Keeping going.
Well done, Tim.
Brilliant.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.